Hey folks, Nick Tockard here with the Historical Fencing Guild. Um, Sorry about the slight delay coming on. We had a little bit of shenaniganry. Hey, let's see if I can do that. There we go. So it delayed my efforts. So let's just fix everything that got unfixed whilst I was working on things. There we go. Close enough. All right. Before we get into talking about what we need to do, we need to thank our sponsors. First on that list is the Independent Creator Directory. That's IndieCD.org, your one-stop shop for the best and the brightest authors, artists, musicians, and other creatives for as low as $40 a lifetime. So once you get lifetime hosting online where you can meet up with other artists, authors, creatives, be in a place to be contacted by them and make sure that you can make your dreams come true as a creative. I'm not going to tell you to use secret code podcast1 to get 50% off, so I didn't. We're also made possible by sales of the Simple Sword, the Fighting Axe, and the Simple Spear. Part of my ongoing set of manuals for Western martial arts, all designed to make the journey to mastery as simple and as effective as possible. Now, the people who truly keep this going, the occasionally neglected but always beloved patrons, are going to come across the screen in just a second, and I will read their names out as I do at the beginning of every show. The recovery from my long-term health issues did require me to fall behind on a lot of things, and I am finally, one, realizing, yeah, that's why I was down. It wasn't like I was slacking. And two, I'm starting to feel a little bit better, getting a bit more done. So we're going to read them off, and then we're going to start off answering a question that was fired off at me literally the exact second I hit end stream last week. So I am really delighted to get into that. And okay, apparently there was a fascinating conversation. So you guys are already hopping and popping. But Off in the Woods, Frog G, Ronald Rain, Bladed Thesis, Brian K. Morris, Cindy Kep, and Steve Augusto are the 6 folks who currently allow me to keep my program going, allow me to buy trainers, allow me to get the gear to review, outfit my training field to train folks who wouldn't be able to get Western martial arts training other ways. You guys are heroes, and I absolutely adore you. Now, I'm a little fumbled coming in because I had quite a bit going on that had to be dealt with, frankly, immediately right before the show. So I was dealing with that best I could. Now, the question that came out was this. Do I ever deal with short swords or discussions on ancient weapons? Because usually I stick to, how do we put it, late medieval, early Renaissance, into the Renaissance and beyond. I don't talk a lot about ancient weapons, and I find that interesting. So I'm going, or it looks that way. This has a 24-inch blade, and this is relayed. This is both parallel with a Celtic leaf blade, able to be found throughout the Bronze Age. Very similar design became popular as a variant of the gladius, and as such was a very effective weapon for a long, long time. I would say going all the way into today. Now, the reason for the relatively short length at that point were, well, twofold. First off, and primarily, Bronze Age weapons were cast. So they would put the shape in sand or some other medium and then pour in the molten bronze to fill the void. When it cooled, it took the shape of the void it was poured into, e.g., a nice leaf blade. And then they would sharpen it and detail it, etc., and make pieces. The actual construction was not dissimilar to how we construct weapons in the modern period, many times peened backs. Sometimes they did flat scales. It just depended on the section. But often you'd find this 20-inch to 24-inch blade. I think this, let me check. I don't have my ruler on me, but I do have a 17-inch blade. And this is very close. This is about 18, which is what I thought. So this is about 18-inch blade. Lord of the Rings fans will instantly see the similarities of this and the famous Hobbit sword Sting. Now, the thing is, this design was very common with slight tweaking almost worldwide. You end up with this, the whole weapon is about arm's length. It's a very effective thrusting weapon. You can cut with it. By adding this belly on each side, it made it a more effective draw cutting weapon. Think of this as a limited kukri on each side, and you start to understand the logistics involved. Now, do I train with these? Do I discuss these? Absolutely. In fact, personally, I am a huge fan of short swords. So things ranging from here to about 26, 30 inches. Then you definitely get into the realm of a sword, wouldn't really be short. But it, of course, is all scaled to the wielder. Now, the thing about this simple sword system that I teach, the only difference in your guards, okay, is how far your angle is, your angle of attack. And I don't mean line of attack, I mean angle. So because it's a cutting weapon, you're going to be more likely to cut, although it's fully thrust-oriented. This is an elegant weapon. Look, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth. They all fit. Ninth is a defense by intimidation. The system still works. Now, the nice thing about a weapon of about this length is if you have two of them, you can dual wield comfortably and not get nearly as in your way as other weapons are. Now, I said there were two reasons for these weapons being roughly this length. The cutout of the bronze and the factor that you have to remember, largely the ancient man, the ancient human, was a much smaller specimen due to less nutrition and less nutritional knowledge. In some cases, due to shorter lifespans, which meant people basically began, in many cases, starting families as soon as they were biologically able to, very early in their teens and onward. That means people were smaller on the battlefield. The weapons were scaled to them. Now, it's not all people, and it's not, your warriors tended to be a larger group of any of any set. The warriors will be the largest, usually. But you also have to remember that many of the historical katana are very close to what we would consider wakizashi today because of a mix of genetics and nutrition. Many Japanese people of the earlier eras were much smaller. They are, to this day, shorter in many cases than people from other ethnicities. This has nothing to do with anything weird. This is just some people are more likely to be taller. Some people are more likely to be shorter. There's no judgment. This is analysis. So your weapon has to fit you. Now, my reasoning for loving this 18-inch to 26-inch range especially is that this is something that can work in any environment. It can couple well with a shield. It can couple well with anything. You can put literally anything. So Will strength, I found my missing daggers. But if, and see, the difference is literally about 4 inches. I love it. These guys aren't, I can swirl them around all day and they're barely going to tap. That's because they're not so long, they tangle. If I cut down, I'm not going to catch the tip on the ground and impede my block. Now, my block may be too low, I mean, too high because it can't reach an extremely low strike to like my foot. But the problem is whenever somebody does an extremely extended low strike, unless they're using something like a spear for reach, their head becomes incredibly vulnerable. That's the downside to foot sniping. And the logistics haven't changed that much. What happened is, ironically, we evolved first arms, then armor. Then we had the arms race, and eventually armor became less effective for most things. So we went away from it. And now we're again getting back into what kind of defensive material can you wear against what is it fighting. And while the focus is largely on bullets in modern martial arts armor, what not martial arts is it though? I was using martial with the other spelling, being based in warfare. Military, put it that way. It's about stopping bullets. However, all those soft armors that are known for stopping bullets work with a series of layered fabrics that are designed to catch and tangle and kind of twist around the bullet that hits. So diverting the force out. So that's your Kevlar and things like that. Now, the problem with all that song and dance is it's really good at that, but it's not as good at defending against sharp impact. Because remember, bullets are essentially very fast, blunt impact instruments. There isn't an edge to a bullet, usually. Now, it gets weird when you have fragmenting shells, fragmenting rounds, but that's still, you still, for the soft armor, have fabric. The plate armor is literally plate armor. The other thing that's happened is it's better steel with better coatings, usually a ceramic overlay that shatters to remove, stop the force of the bullet. It depends on what kind of armor you're dealing with in modern military applications. That would be in a plate carrier. It's still a breastplate. For all the advances in technology, man-to-man, human-to-human combat, especially melee-based combat, hasn't changed that much. Techniques have been developed, refined, forgotten, but it hasn't changed that much. And when I set out to define my style, and the style I was going to teach people, I did not look from the perspective of, this is the secret martial art with the cutting secret strike that will let you do. No. I wanted a style that once I taught you guys the basics to any of my students, any of the time, they could pick up any weapon vaguely classified enough to make it go to defend themselves with capacity. So yes, the simple sword definitely translates well to 18 inches, 18, 20-inch weapons. I actually prefer them. When I was an SCA fencer, I fought with this and another blade that is not quite in reach, but this is a flexi dagger. They are not very flexy at all. This one has, as you can see, just a bit of an S-curve that has formed over the years, which is why I don't fence with it. Eventually, when I redo my study, I'll make a simple plaque for it. I will heavily oil it. I will put it on the wall and remember when. Because for the most part, I have switched to the less expensive, less climate sensitive, and very available polypropylene weapons. Yes, these have their weakness. They can get brittle in extreme cold, and they can get soft in extreme heat. However, given my assorted situations, I really shouldn't be fighting in either of those situations anyway. But especially from a single fighter perspective, very simple, very easy. From a line fighter perspective, basic riot tactics still are the same: shield, couched, short stick, short sword, short spear, advance, thrust, advance, thrust. That's the basic first things you need to understand. And it works because your shield protects you, and the sword does bad things to whoever's in front of you. And if you do that as an organized group with your shields overlaid like scale mail, any impact is absorbed by multiple people spread out in the line, and then in comes the poke. This is simple and elegant and monstrously effective. Now, of course, when you see something like this, you're looking at Greeks and Romans a lot. It was far more advanced that they went down the road of combat. But I want you to understand the basics, because once you understand the basics, you can make something work. And then if you find that it suits you, if you find that it fits your passion or resonates physically because of the historical period, or because it fits your body type, your aggression level, there are a lot of reasons why we select the weapons we select. Then I encourage you to narrow your focus down, and I can look up references if I don't have them. I can put you to people to talk to. And if I don't know those, I'll dig around and find them, because that's what I do for my fighters, for my fencers, for the lot that lives somewhere in the realm between. But even to this day, this is a real close, 18-inch, 20-inch is a classic machete length machete. It's easy to carry, quick to deploy. You still have a lot of hacking power there, but you're not overly encumbered and overly tangled in close quarters. Either I could use this in the monstrously narrow streets of the ancient cities. Okay, when you see the dig sites, even modern places like Israel, Syria, even modern Europe, when you go to Prague, there are these, the older roads are deliberately very narrow. And that was to impede invading forces. They did not want you to be able to march 4 to 8 men abreast, as many as you have, easily through. It gives more advantage to the defenders by creating lots of bottlenecks. And when you go back to a time where city-states were a thing, such tactics were very important. Your weapons will counter the armor that they oppose, and they will align with the battlefield from which they are drawn. This starts to make a lot of weapons that you see that might seem odd, oftentimes make a lot of sense. What is selected and carried by a lot of people tends to fit their situation unless there is a social norm otherwise. Now, the other neat thing, when you look at this particular blade typography with this guard, especially if you just straighten it out, this is very much in line with a lot of spearheads. Because bronze spears could be this long, but you could make the pole as long as you wanted within, human reason. Now we start getting into interesting weaponry. We get pole arms, but the blade itself, very similar. The edged weapon at the end of the pole arm was essentially a short sword, and that carried on through till today. Your Nodachis, your Yaris in Japan, essentially short swords, a short katana, a short straight sword. There still exist. You look at the Kwandaos, the Pundaos. They are the Guandaos. They are essentially, you take a dao, which is a big hacking kind of blade, the Chinese broadsword, and you exaggerate it often, and you put it at the end of the stick. Understanding short weapons and long weapons are closer together in many ways than short weapons and the medium lengths. And certainly than the long weapons and medium lengths. Because when you have a short weapon like this, you're going to have to do a lot of long range thrusting because you still want to get the maximum reach. So that means you're not going to diddle around a lot in the middle unless you are in hacking range, especially that extreme close up. And by having a double edge, especially with this double belly, so the weight is here, pulls the sweet spot of the balance out here, means it's very, very choppy, but yet lets you keep, if you keep the tip on line, it will actually tend to fight being brought offline. You understand that? I have more power with a cut with something like this than if it's a straight narrow blade. But I also am more likely to keep the tip on line because I have to fight the inertia of this thicker middle section, which is, thicker even in terms of the distal taper. So this blade, and as you can see, has an actual spine to it that is thicker in the middle. And that lends itself to the distal taper at the end. This is going to give you a very proactive thrust. And this is why this is one of my favorite trainers. And I do honestly, as a goodie to myself someday, I will order a second one. Because it's just so delightful. Now, Purple Heart Armory makes similar. Others make similar. It is, in modern firearms terms, this is very much like a PDW, a personal defense weapon. It's bigger than a pistol, but shorter than a rifle. And you have to understand, swords were sidearms. I say it, I say it, I say it. Swords are sidearms. Not just that they were worn at the side, but they were secondaries. Your primary weapon very often is a spear. And this goes throughout history, especially pre-gunpowder, long after. It's ironic that we fixate on the knights having their arming sword fights, and we fixate on the samurai with the katana. The primary weapons of the samurai were the bow first and the spear second. By the time they're clearing their katana in actual warfare, a lot of things have gone very wrong. This is when things have gotten ugly. And that makes sense because a spear for the purpose of production is very cheap to make, because getting wooden shafts is a lot easier than getting metal blades. And if you need to, you just sharpen it, call it a pike, take the tip, wood harden it, and hope for the best. And that's going back indefinitely into the annals of time. That's predating humanity way out there. But that's before they even came up with spearheads. But when I say, okay, let me point out something. I need to make a new new banner for just a second because I actually need this. Give me a second because I realized I have not done this. Trained professional. Do not attempt. Now, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. The vast majority of time on this program, on this channel, I will show you training weapons. But I want to show you something, and to do that, I actually have to get a modern. It has since been renamed. Give me a second so I don't knock everything and its mother over. But, okay, I have since added a carry strap to this that I acquired at Goodwill. This is a Shroud Bush sword. Okay? Single edge, belly, weight. Single edges are a lot safer. They're easier to control. What do you see is similar in this? The length, well, it's a little shorter, but not much. Again, this is 16, 17 inch. I think this is a 20-inch blade when you factor in the ground. But look at the body geometry. Now, if I flip it, you see, it's just a slightly exaggerated version. If you took the extra material from this edge and put it a little farther, it would be not as good at cutting, but a lot better at thrusting. And you'd have, it's literally half of a ancient weapon, an ancient short sword. This is a very effective tool. This is a very effective weapon for gardening, for clearing brush, and for self-defense. This is a real weapon. That means you must respect it. I don't want you to be afraid of knives and weapons, but I do want you always, 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 always to think about and respect them. Now, yes, I'm sure Thesis is probably talking about how, again, I'm using a Japanese sheathing method. That's what I learned first. That's where it tends to live. But the logistics, the blade length, the blade profile, the edge tapering of these weapons have not changed in 6,000 years. When something works that long, it deserves our respect. And there is let's see, I made it. I forgot to add the banner, which of course I did. But this is the banner that I should have been using. We're getting there. The game narrows in scope, but the moves don't necessarily change. We are taught to, oh God, in the modern world, especially in America, we have a bizarre worship of the complex and obfuscated. What do I mean? Well, this is my cell phone. Now I have a fairly rudimentary understanding of physics. I'm working on it. One of my textbooks are over there. But this is a remarkably complex device that I have not gone to school to fully understand. I use it every day. But I am I'm little better than somebody who would think this is magic. And the vast majority of people are. We are starting to lose our connection to the technologies around us. This is a dangerous truth as they become more complex. This is a very simple concept that has been refined. And they found something that works and has been proven for a very, very long time. something that can be made with reasonable amounts of resources, something that can be wielded with relatively minimal training, and be highly effective. Remember, in the ancient world, a great many of the people who went to war were conscripts. Indeed, many places throughout the world, even now, a great many of the people who have been forced to go to war were conscripted. They were forced by government powers to do so. This means a lot of things, but for the purpose of what we're discussing, any system that is taught to the mass of an armed force has to be, at its root, understandable by the least intelligent and applicable by the least physically strong, the weakest. Without having a system that can be grasped by everyone at its base, a military force will not function. Now, as we look at the evolution of a military force, there are people who show talent. There are people who show ability. And part of what they are trained with, okay, you can make the basic weapons go. Let's see, can you work this? How does this work with you? How do these strategies? Are you a leader? And theoretically, and one would hope, in any armed force, promotion should be a meritocracy, with the goal being that you are promoted to the topmost point before you reach your level of incompetence. Sadly, and across the board and across all history, that is not always the case. Wealth and privilege and other advantage will always influence things. And whenever there is something that could function as a title that gives, again, status, a higher status, it is sought by certain mentalities, whether they deserve it or not. Likewise, there are personalities and mentalities that will reach a level of comfortable competence and not elect to strain themselves. And very often in a long, and this is my observation of many years of study and part of my sociological thinking, we push people too high, very often too fast, in systems based on meritocracy, wherein sometimes it's better to have somebody who is the best skirmish commander and leader of small forces for effective strikes than have that individual commanding an entire army, because combat changes radically at the scale of engagement. It becomes increasingly more logistically complex. Now, in the past, I think it was only 10 or 12 people per individual who would be considered tip of the spear. Actual fighters. You have armorers, you have medical troops, you have cooks, you have teamsters, you have people who get them to the field. They may not engage in actual combat, but they're necessary to get the combatants there and stay there and provide for them. What they have to learn is radically different than what uh, front of the spear, radically different than the elite fighters in any organization need. Your shock troops, your special forces, it has to be scaled, and the command of them. Um, I have commanded in mock battles, SEA stuff, small groups. I think uh, up to 8 or 10, 15. I understand some of the larger scale logistics, but I would not want to be that style of commander. I am best deployed as commanding a fire and forget kind of team, where they say, we're going to do this, 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 and you guys go bugger off and find some fun. And then we do. And we sneak around and we wait and we harry the enemy line and then we come hide. This style of quasi guerrilla tactics is very natural to me. Running the logistics of keeping the whole major line and commanding commanders to do this, this, and this, and keeping all that's a little bigger scope than I'm comfortable with. But understanding that brings you the same concepts I talk about. The scale of your weapon affects what it can do, but affects the where it can go, what you can do with it. A medium to smaller size weapon is insanely versatile, depending on your setting. Which is why throughout the golden age of piracy, hangers and short swords and dussicks, not because they wanted to use those on the decks, but because they had to be able to fight in the narrow confines of beneath the decks, in the dark and smelly tunnels that effectively form the combat area of ship-to-ship combat. Once you've cleared the decks, you still have to scour the insides. And like the song says, you can't swing a broadsword when you're in the forest. The extra steel keeps getting in the way. So, riddle me this. Let me find something if I can. Which set of techniques and muscle memory do you think will serve you better as you are scaling? The techniques of an arming sword for defense, if what you have is a knife. Or the techniques of something like this. The blade difference, it's half the length almost. It's almost exactly half the length. Yeah, between half and 2/3. It's usually between the forte or the mezzo forte and the forte. That means the leverage is very nice on something like this. If you are a weaker individual, leverage becomes a thing. Most of the students I train have physical limitations, and most of them have trained, meaning likely that they are a little weaker in certain measures. So this starts to become a much more comfortable weapon for them than this, because they don't have to fight the sword to make it go. And it's out in the living. Oh, no, it's not. But what happens when you switch to something like this? Shorter, longer hill. You gain leverage. So the way for a weaker opponent, a weaker fighter, either smaller in stature, weaker in strength, genetics, gender, and I'm talking biological assigned gender. I'm not getting into that. This is not a shot. This is not a thing. This is where you start going, if your bone structure is this, your weight of gravity is going to be here. Your joints are going to work differently. Things like that. I've had a couple people misunderstand. A weapon that gives you better leverage for the length or shorter length for the leverage is what's going to be more comfortable. Now, if you're a big, strong guy, you can have, or gal, I mean, I see no problem with Gina Carano running around with a greatsword, or Ronda Rousey running around with a greatsword. And there are a lot of systems out there that will work very well for you. But finding the sweet point, the sweet spot, where what you wield is at its most comfortable to be wielded long term. That's what you're looking for in your primary weapons or weapon, especially if you're starting out. It needs to be comfortable. Strength can be developed. You can and will grow stronger. I recently have done it again in recovery. And I mean, again, from the last time I did it, talking about it, because there was a month where I was incredibly ill. I had to go to the ER. I literally, I don't know if it was dysentery or what, but it nearly dropped me. The recovery from that is something I'm just really starting to feel. I still drill every night with the 2 wolf sabers. I found them to be the right balance of just heavy enough to be worth fighting for, but just light enough to be comfortable, that I could build back up with those tools, as I still am. So, in conclusion of all this, before I get into the chat, yes, Virginia, because I can't remember who it was. I honestly don't remember who asked it. It was a brilliant question. I do train with short swords. I do favor them. I quite love short swords. I understand their flaws. And their flaws are a guy with longer reach can plink you off. And you accept that. Because if I were fighting bare knuckle, if I squared off, my reach, is going to be very limited compared to the bigger guys. We could complain about that, or we can weaponize it. We can understand, embrace, and build towards our strengths. And from that case period, absolutely I love short swords. And the irony that this in John Miner's hand, he gave it to me, was literally a dagger. It was nearly a knife. In my hand, it's a short sword, nearly a sword. Scale matters. When you don't know how to approach a problem, do not look for the easiest solution. Look for the simplest and start there. It doesn't matter what the problem is. One step at a time. Will it take longer? Probably. Will it take more? Probably. Will it get the job done? Yes. When you don't know a better way, that's the way you pick. And while you're doing that, you'll start to learn a better way. You'll start to understand better. Okay? So I really wanted to address that. I was saddened that I had hit the end stream when that question came up. It was a brilliant question. I hope this was helpful. I'm going to go into the chat, see what everybody's saying. and we're going to go from there. Okay. Let's see. We pull that back. Cindy Kep is back for more fun. Always. Want a book sword? It's about spears. Would you believe Access Melee Combat? Absolutely. Go to my Amazon store. You can find all these in digital and in paperback. I am working on some of them going over to hardcover. It is a fascinating study. It is a fascinating subject. One moment. Keeps happening. Rather embarrassing. Okay. Got it. Nope. Anyway. The my books are even available through Kindle Unlimited. So if you are a part of that program, you can read them for free. And I will say, if you have Kindle Unlimited and you're planning to buy my ebook, 1, thank you. 2, scroll through it on your Kindle. Do this for anybody you like or respect. Scroll through it through Kindle Unlimited first. We get paid a page rate, and then cut into buying the ebook and possibly the hardback, depending on how you like to do things. I tend to buy my books and have them in various formats because I like to be able to reference things. But us too, says Bladed Thesis, at least we will be until when we get past these trains. It happens. Find fun artwork at deviantart.com/NickT. Yes, once again, I'm prepping a large dump for that. Cindy Kep. Yeah, I used to live out in a small rural town in Texas. As it started to expand, neighborhoods were built on opposite sides of the rest of the town with a busy track in the middle of the two sides. And there were only 2 ways to cross the track. Trains would often stop in town and block both ways across. The city asked the railroad companies to please not block both ways across, and the company said there wasn't a law that said they couldn't, so they did. Well, one day it happened. Somebody was in a neighborhood with major health malfunction, EMS. Couldn't get across because both trains were blocked. The dispatcher called the railroad company to get them to clear the way. Nope. They were timing another train, and so getting that train going would have been too much of a pain. EMS from a city 15 miles away were dispatched and got there faster. The fellow with the health malfunction did survive, but it was close. The family sued the railroad company, resulting in a settlement out of court, and trains no longer block both intersections at once. That is tragic. It is horrible that people can't just get there and go, we don't need to do that. Thesis says, we have to cross a single set of tracks on our way to and from work. When we got the tracks, a train was going slow one way. Halfway through, another train came the other way, even slower. We are literally on the wrong side of the tracks in our town, which is hilarious if anyone were to know about it. And yes, we have been caught many a time behind the tracks. And if you listen to my morning show, often you'll hear the train in the background. Earth, that's annoying. It really is. And that's the link for today's program. And that's the link for where you can find us, www.youtube.com/@thehistoricalfencingguild. And this is the link for my Patreon, help Nick train people to be dangerous safely, patreon.com/thehistoricalfencingguild. And Tea and Swords, which is Thesis's show. Yeah, we were stuck at the railroad crossing for 10 minutes. Gah, ick. 2 trains opposite sides. Marshall and Marshall. See, you understand. Plate armor conjures an image of kitchenware armor. Well, but considering ceramic armor exists and is not as far from, say, Corel as people would think. One moment, please. Oh. Better than pizza box armor, I'd imagine. I would hope so. No, hi, Johnny. Been a bit. No road is so tight that a little lube can't help get the soldiers through. Oh, you'd be surprised. It's a sword on a steak. Yes, I love wide-headed spears. They're still used long spearhead, short spear. I cannot remember the African tribe. I shared a video of someone who currently still uses the shield and short spear techniques on the Historical Fencing Guild's Facebook group. It's not that far from a Chinese method. I still need to get that video made about the differences. And I think you should. And Independent Creator Directory, my sponsor, drops in, drops his like, as everyone should, waves to the host, grabs the water, teleports back out. Hi, Joe. Bye, Joe. Hot dog! Sword Sage! I didn't know you were here. Glad you're still doing these. Hope that you've been doing okay. I've been holding the line very well. I am so glad to hear from you. It has been far too long. We need to get together and do streams and stuff, my friend. I have missed you dearly. I am ecstatic. But that makes my whole week, guys. Hey, Sword Sage, good to see you. But yes, I needed to talk to you about something. I've mentioned it on the show. I don't know if you've got it. Sorry, Thesis. I found something that I wish had been around when you were nearby. This beauty I got on Amazon for less than $50. Sorry, I'm bumping my phone. And it is a polypropylene version of a gin, a Han gin, actual corded grip. I mean, featherweight, safe and flexy. Again with the trainer. Well, Sword Sage needs to get a hold of one of these and review it. It is absolutely exquisite. And they're starting to finally do trainers that are coming with sheaths. And the more I talk about it, the more we can hopefully get. I'm sure you have. I'm not surprised at all. But it's poor folk available, exquisite trainer. I would love to hear you do a review on these. And like I said, we need to talk. It's been too long. Far too long. I'll put that down there. And let's see. Days have been very busy with work and such, but Sundays and Mondays might work to catch up. Excellent. I'm hopeful. And now, anyone who doesn't know this, Sword Sage and I go way, way, way back. I've appeared in a few of his videos, and he's been somebody I have had the privilege and pleasure of sparring with and refining styles with and testing things with. I was his Mr. Fix-It for a long time. Basically, does this work? Yeah, way, way, way back. And unfortunately, he had to move to the other side of the freaking continent. But you're missed. You really are. If you want to discuss gin content, if you want to talk Chinese swordsmanship, this is the guy to go to. And I think I got Thesis came to me through a Sword Sage. But it is a real delight to have him in the chat. So yes, guys, the gin are they're finally starting to do trainers that apply to the weapons people actually want, and they're starting to do sword trainers that include quality sheaths, not the usual flimsy plastic sayas you would find on the polypropylene katanas of the past. My trainer katana back there is exquisite. I really am glad, because you need the complete system to train in any weapon. And I have been preaching, and Sword Sage can attest, since the dawning of my sword career. Why aren't we training from the draw? Oh, God. I'm sorry, I'm just flashing back to shenanigans and sparring with Sword Sage. Oh, God, we had fun. But the fact that it is starting to creep into the eastern side of what happens means it may creep into the western. And I will take complete delight in having that as different western just yeah, I remember you bemoaning that. I am, if anything, I am consistent, my friend. Uh but we're still providing training. Only the Japanese systems have been training from the draw, and even now it's become very formulaic. Exactly. And that's why I catch a bit of flack from some of my viewers, because whatever weapon it is, I tend to sheath it in a very Japanese style. Um, Whether that counts as a training scar or not, I'm not sure. But to date, I have not cut myself on a sword sheathing it. I've cut myself on a few knives over the years, but that's more a case of the other reason why I don't like folders. But it is so good to have you here. So I spent a huge amount of time on a single question from last week, but I thought it really needed to be discussed and addressed. And I hope the individual who asked it will catch this video in the rerun, even if they don't make it here. And it's very nice to have someone who is as well known and as authoritative as Sword Sage is in the sword tuber community be able to speak to the point that yes, this is consistent. And I hope you've been able to spar. I know the last time I heard from you, you had a very lovely lady, and you were both getting into some martial endeavors. And I'd love to hear more about how that's going. Reach out to me, Sage. It has been far too long. Y'all, you see this? Y'all see this? I have to have people and have them fight imposter syndrome at every level, okay? I would personally put you at about the tier or the high end of the tier just below Skullgrim in overall sword stuff, and you're probably more versed in all the Chinese swordsmanship than he is. And I say that with all the respect for Skullgrim, for what he is and what he does. Yes, I will admit that I have had a personal dislike for Shadversity over recent times over the AI content, but I think you are selling yourself quite a bit short, and I think that if your life allows you to get back into it more, because I do watch all your videos, I think it will do you wonders, and you'll just move right back up. I have no problem with that because you are quite absolutely, yeah. And he's asking for info on Chinese sort of stuff, but he's really good at what he does. Good at sparring too. Exactly, and that's what we need more of. We need people who are going to cross train, cross collaborate, discuss. Get on panels and both be willing to say, I don't know. What's your opinion on this? And stress test with safe sparring practices. This is how martial arts stay vital and how they make sense. It really does boil down to if we keep the discussion going. We all grow. We grow as students, as teachers, as philosophers, as humans through the study and application of martial arts. It builds that mind, body, and social connection that we need. And all of that is necessary for a healthy spiritual life, in my humble opinion. Not dictating anything on the nature, that's not my job. But with these wonderful folks, we can find real opportunities to grow. And many times I have learned more from people asking me questions than me just pulling out the answers. Because if I don't know, and as you've seen, I will say, I don't know, I will get back to you. And then I dang well get back to you guys. And my door is always digitally open, for you guys if you ever have questions or comments. I take constructive criticism. I know I need to up my values and all this stuff. It's all in the works. But you have to have people that you can help out to get to your level or higher. And you have to have people whose level of anything you aspire to. And very few people with that attitude, unfortunately. Absolutely. There are very few people, which is why those of us who have the capacity to carry that attitude, who can pull the ego out of it and help, grow ourselves and build each other as we go, have an even stronger calling, the need to do that. It's remarkably important. It's important to keep trying. It's important to keep growing and building each other. And I know I harp on that. I harp on that on both my shows because on my other network, that at Nicholas Talker, another YouTube channel, all my writing and art and other shenanigans for building people up can be found. I try to keep the Historical Fencing Guild channel relatively pure in concept and application. But I'd love to see all of you over there as well. That door is always open too, because a lot of us have to discuss the feelings of imposter syndrome. And I know, especially of late, I broadcast there 3 times a week. At least. We'll do this. Whoops, not 6. Boom. Yes, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I broadcast over there from 10 a.m. Eastern to theoretically 11 a.m. Eastern, although often the shows run over. On Wednesday, it's an art stream, at least in part, where if I do nothing else, I draw the thumbnail art for the next week's stuff. And I invite you, absolutely, Sword Sage, to come on down. And I haven't spoken with my dear friend Sword Sage, and I'm working really hard to call him by his handle and not his name, but really hard. But I have to bug you mildly to please, sir, write down your martial arts journey, write down your style that you've been developing, because you've been tweaking from taking pieces from Wing Chun into Bagua, into a whole bunch of other things. And I know that years of training that between your katana work and your gin work and all the stuff you've done with LKChen has crystallized into a very interesting style, and I'd love to see where you are these days. I am getting back into it after several rather severe and moderately to mildly debilitating health condition situations, but it's still about fighting the good fight. And as we get into the stable weather, I will be reaching out to the relatively local guildies to come out and play. Having moved 100 miles roughly from where I used to be, it makes it a little hard on them. And most of the people who are really interested in my local area are a little young. So I have to wait a couple of years for them to be ready. So in that time, I'm trying to make sure my facilities are ready. But skipping back, we have Foxy saying imposter syndrome can be nasty. Absolutely, Foxy. That's why it's one of my greatest opponents. And Foxy, I'm not qualified to speak on imposter syndrome. Oh, Lord in heaven. It will be something we all fight, but that's okay. Admitting it's there is a big part in defeating it, and I believe you guys can. I'll let you know. The Sunday will be hard to connect since it's Mother's Day, and yes, Monday I'll be spending a lot of time with girlfriend. But if not this Thursday, I'll try to say, hey, no worries. We're still friends on Facebook, I think, so you can hit me up there, Sage, or message me, direct through YouTube. I'm on Twitter. I'm all over the place. So we just need to sync back up, my friend, because it was too good. I just have a lot crammed into my time these days. Part of the reasons why my videos are slow to come out. And that happens. Life does that. And I understand and I greatly appreciate the time you can take out. Because there are interferences. My Patreon folks, bless your souls, your patient, loving souls. I have some stuff in the works for me there, for you guys there. And in fact, I have a request of my Patreon members who are here. That information, the information that you gave me, that I'm going to ask for again, was mostly on the computer that died. So please, my Patreon members, reach out and tag me, possibly through Patreon. I'll set up a thing with your mailing addresses. I want to do something nice for you. I don't want to spoil it because it's still in the works, but I do want to do something nice for you. Sage, if you want my info, I'll send it to you in a heartbeat. I have no problem with that. Like I said, we go way back. But sorry, my throat is not being cooperative. That happens on Fridays between doing two shows. That being said, I would love to hear more from you guys. And it looks like I've gone through this whole question. Everybody seemed to enjoy it. And we're wrapping up because this is basically an hour-long show, and I have some duties I have to tend to basically immediately after this. So, Sage, at your leisure, reach out to me. All the rest of you who are my patrons, send me your addresses. I'm planning something cool. Those of you who aren't, consider becoming a Patreon member. As little as $1 a month will help me be able to afford to buy trainers to review them and get the gear to keep the outside list fields repaired and functional so that I can train people and work with the folks who have local disabilities, and just help to keep this little crazy mission of mine alive. Far more money than should of my humble profits from my book sales and my convention sales often go to the guild's uses. So anything that can be done is much appreciated. And as Cindy Kep is giving my links once again to get my assorted published works from Amazon and my art still on DA, been 20 years, I'm still there. I encourage you good folks to reach out and keep reaching out. If you have questions, please, and literally anything on the subject. If I don't know, I will be honest and tell you, and I'll point you towards somebody who does. So with that, guys, we're going to wrap up. So, guys, remember, keep your eyes open, do your drills, be kind to yourself and each other, and as always, thank you for supporting your local sword master. I will be back for this show at 8 p.m. Eastern next Friday. I will be back on the sister network, the Nicholas Tuckert Network, next Monday at 10 o'clock. At some point this weekend, I will set up the videos because StreamYard only lets me do it a week ahead. Hey, Devil Flyer. How are you? It's been a while. You caught me as I'm closing my show down. I am so sorry about this timing, but it's really great to see and hear from you. I love when the people from the Nerd Bacon era and a few other things can make it on down to the show. So when I close this up, start this video over. Enjoy the in-depth, bizarre conversation on short swords and some of their value and application, and my love affair with them. And with that, guys, I want you to have a great night. Okay, seriously, I love you. You should too. I will see you all very soon. Toodles, folks.